All right guys, here it is. It's February 10th. Gavin and I are on a new property today, and we're in full swing off-season mode. My off-season is completely filled up with land management work. That's my full-time gig. I'm pretty fortunate to have this fall in my lap here a couple years ago, but one of the main guys that I take care of is Lee Abraham. I work really close with Lee. He doesn't have as much time with his job to be up here 24/7 working on his farm. And today we're on a new farm that he just acquired here in this recent year. It's called the 190, just because it's 190 acres, and it is a sweet layout for a farm.
Good morning. We are at the top of what I call the GQ Ridge. It's where I killed GQ a few years ago. I hunted him several days back in 2020. We're after GQ Junior now. We're after his sheds. He's our primary goal for next year. Our target. He's where all of our resources and our energy can be put into as far as planning for him, strategizing for his, hopefully, put a tag on him this fall. But y'all come on with us. I got Josh here, I got Caleb here. Come on with us and let's see if we can turn up. You got one? So this is a 3-year-old. You found him in the muddy several times the last few days. You hunted out there almost every day.
Yeah, almost every day.
Let's see him. Stick him out.
Maybe right here. I found two. Andy found these two just outside of Badger. All right, guys. Here we are, just wrapping up a fun week with the family. I had all my 4 kids and my wife up. As you can see, we finally came across the deer I was going after all week. It took 4 days to find him. We finally kicked him up this morning, just over my left shoulder, on a little tight, small little draw. And probably we haven't put a tape to him yet, but probably in the 80s, I would assume. Thanks for sticking around. We'll continue the story as he start putting on the velvet footage, and we'll bring it to you. So thanks, guys.
Well, today is March 21st, but where we're at right now, we are in what was Hog Jr.'s core area. Whenever I said this deer was coming to the north, this is where he was coming, right here. And the main reason he was coming up here was because it had about 100 acres of standing corn, if you guys can remember. Talked a lot about that, and it did not get picked until February. So I'm thinking that there's probably quite a few sheds out here. Kind of hoping we'll find guards today. There was a really good 4-year-old that was just a tight 10, really heavy, showed a lot of potential. Could be a buck that I might be really interested in hunting next year. Let's see if we can go find some bones. I'm hoping for like 5. That sounds good, huh, Dragos? 5? Let's see. We got Chief with us. That counts for something. Maybe he'll find one for us too. Let's go find some sheds. Gosh, man, we've been walking we've covered a lot of ground so far, and I just can't believe that we haven't found a shed. I mean, I could be on these terraces. They could be anywhere out here. A little frustrating, but we got to get up on them soon. Let's check the CRP hillside over here, see if we can have any luck. Hey, we're on the board, fellas. That's an old one, maybe? Not a big guy. Ancient. That almost kind of looks like maybe it's a young version of Heavy 10 there. That's sweet. One down. Chief just actually found his first shed. Didn't you, buddy? Nice. Hey, here we go, buddy. I found one. Nice. Flashy. Number 3. Spot number 2. You see it yet? Right here? She's going right to it. Oh, they really chewed him up, but dude, that's gonna be a big deer one day. That is too cool. He's a 4-year-old. I need to name him still. I remember Jacob and we encountered him. He came and worked that vine scrape. Gosh, right under the tree. It was beautiful footage, but He could be really special next year. We gotta find the other side, man. I'm pumped. This other side is right here, not 20 yards away in this court, man. And this one's perfect. It makes me feel better that we're finding them now in the corner. Yes, sir. Those are one of the bucks that we were looking for today. Oh. This is one that I potentially could be hunting right here next year. It's just a little draw. It's nothing special up here, man. It's very secluded. It's overlooked. Not a lot of people know. Not a lot of people know that these deer stay up here. And that's why you find big deer like that in little stuff, man. Oh, that makes me happy.
Welcome back to another episode, guys. As you can see, Kaleb's been getting after it pretty good. He reminds me a lot of myself back in the day. I mean, the passion for the whitetails, there's two things that really lead you to be a great hunter, in my opinion. Passion for this lifestyle would be one of them, and attention to detail. You know, the thing that makes you cut that one last limb that's in your way, that kind of stuff, that really pushes you to be a great hunter, and Kaleb's got that. So looking forward to see what he does in the upcoming years. On this week's show, we're diving into a few key things. First, we're going to dive into how you can set up a farm or pre-set up a farm using maps, you know, have an idea of what you want to do before you even get there. We're going to dive into that first, and then we're going to come back, join Kaleb again, and he shows us how to acquire permission and how to set up these permission farms. Well, welcome back to the off season, guys. This is that 80 I was telling you about that I just acquired. And I do a lot of my pre-setup I do online. So there's a lot of different maps you can look at, and I've been doing this for, 10 or 15, 20 years, I don't know, a long time, where we scope out everything on the aerials, the topo, soil maps. I'll just go through a few of them here with you. Here's just a basic aerial where you're looking at, cover, any pinch points you can find here. So then going to the next one is this is the aerial with the topo, and that's really nice because not only can you see the cover where there might be a funnel, with a fence line, a ditch or whatever, but now you can see how it lays topographically. You can see your ditches, your ridge tops like this. Here's a ridge top here. So now you start to get an idea of how that lays. And then what I like to go to would be a soils map. So when you start laying this out, like, okay, this is where I want to have my food, you can look at the soils and see, is that a place that's going to grow the food? If you're growing corn or something like that, you want it to be your best soil. Just about any of this stuff, but a lot of times, if you're just growing turnips or maybe beans, it doesn't have to be your best soil. I mean, you could put it on the best location that's maybe not good soil, but always want to know this. So you look at these ridge tops are usually going to be your best stuff, and then the bottoms, when you get down into 13B, that's really good soil. That's bottom ground, where the top soil is washed down into those bottoms, so that'll be your best soil there. And here's a CSR showing the same thing we're just talking about. So these are your soil types, and this will break down how good that soil is, the soil types, the CSR2 value, so you can see which ones are the best. Here's 13B, like I was telling you, a 76 CSR2, which is really good. It goes all the way down to 792 D2, which this is corn suitability rating. So, I mean, it'll grow other crops decent, even though corn suitability rating is only a 7 on this. I mean, beans might actually do pretty good because what they need for nutrients is totally different. So just because it's not good for corn doesn't mean it won't grow anything. But moving along from that, this is another map that I really like. So I've got this laid out where I want some food. This is a hill shading map. And this will really, I mean, you can see these ditches and stuff. This will really give you an idea of what you have for ditches. It lets you see like how pronounced they are and stuff like that, so you can key in on funnels. So another really good map to look at right there. So I'll just go through this with you. I've got some bullet points down here that I want to hit on so we don't take too long talking about this. But the number one thing that I look at is access. One thing I'm going to do is we're going to put a road down this east side so we can access this on any type of west wind, whether it's west, southwest, northwest. And you know, of course, your scent's just blowing across this stuff that, you know, wide open over here. Also, I've already got a road on this side so we can access any type of east wind on this side. So once you have your access down, now you can start looking at your stand sites, which is number 2 here. So we know how we're going to get to it. Now, okay, we can get to that. We've got a ditch here, and I do have a blind set up at the top of this ditch here. You can see it on your topographical map. You can see it over here on your hill shade. Another one here. So a lot of different options, but now we know how we can get to it. We come down this east side, get to the ditch, walk the ditch right into the blind. You know, same thing down farther. We got some more stand setups with ditches, you know, like right here's another one. So we'll get to all that from the east side. So, you know, we got other stuff over here we'll get to from the west. But the nice thing about the cedars is that blocks you from being seen a lot of times. You know, you can still access maybe down this road in some cases. You know, when we do these access roads, nothing's going to be able to see you, I mean, unless they're basically standing on the road. So that'll be kind of nice. We'll leave those in strategic spots and, you know, don't take those cedars out. The other one is food plots and kill plots. So once we have our access down and we have our stand sites down, now we can start devising food around that aspect. So if you come down here and look at this, this is where I want to have my main food source. So this is destination food right here. I want primarily bedding down this direction. So, you know, as you get later into the year, they tend to want to travel farther to food if it's not cold and snowy. If it's mild and no snow on the ground, for whatever reason, they tend to travel half mile to 3/4 of a mile, I've noticed. So this gives them that distance to come bed. And this may not end up being food here. This is one that I have as a question mark. If I need this much food, that's another 3 acres. I'll have some kind of a road down through here. You know, we're trying to get them to walk that, and then we'll have stand sites along the way. And the thing that's important about this is, you know, yeah, the food source is going to be good to hunt, but you don't want to set and hunt that every day because you're going to burn that out. So we need some other areas where we can hunt and stay away from the food, and, you know, just pick your times you want to hunt that food source. Keep that element of surprise in there, and that makes these all the better. So the other thing we were just talked about was the trail system to enhance the stands and the access, and this is what we're talking about right here. The other thing we want to look at, and we actually need to go look at the farm on this, is the TSI. We need to know what's there as far as what type of trees we want to cut, you know, if it's all cedars. You know, cedars doesn't provide anything really for food. And when you get into these ditches, this does have some hardwood timber and some brush and stuff in it and all these. So we need to look at doing TSI, but there again, if you're doing TSI on this stuff, we want that to be, we want to enhance it where we want the deer to bed. So I wouldn't want to enhance it, you know, right where I want to access or something like that. So, you know, we want to walk through here for access or down through here. So I wouldn't want to TSI all this right here. I don't want them to bed there. So I'm not going to make that better. Of course, you get the regeneration, you know, oak generation and whatever comes up from the TSI, opening the canopy. You know, that's a lot more food source than most people think about. Yeah, all this stuff is great, and, you know, that's their evening food where they're heading, but, you know, during the day, you know, 50% of the time, they're feeding on browse. But this is the kind of stuff to me that's a lot of fun, you know, anymore, taking a farm that's a clean slate and making it fantastic hunting. You know, the deer are there, maybe even a big buck. That's really rewarding to me, that you take it from something that's just, you know, not great hunting, and you make it a great hunting farm. And then when you kill a big buck on it, you know, I don't think the average viewer probably doesn't, you know, realize that how rewarding that is to put the work in and then reap the rewards from it, you know. So stay tuned for the next segment. We'll be back with you. We'll continue to plug away at her. Thank you.
Man, it's been a fun spring so far. It's late April now, and most of you guys are probably turkey hunting. I'm not as big of a turkey hunter myself. I still enjoy taking Casey and kids out, seeing their reactions. But I'm just so ate up with deer hunting that that's really all I focus on year round. And I was talking to Josh, we were trying to brainstorm some ideas on what would be a good topic for the show, and I brought up how a lot of the ground that I hunt over the years it's really changed what my ideal permission farm looks like. And I think we can go in more depth with that and just how I acquire permission, how I maintain permission over multiple years instead of getting thrown off these farms. So I think the best way to talk about this story is to back it up all the way when I first started hunting. You know, my dad introduced it to me at a really young age, like most of you guys, and we moved in 2008, changed middle schools, and started meeting new friends. And one of my best friends still to this very day is Collins Marine. Collins is on the show. He's hunted with me quite a bit in the past. Collins and I started hunting where my parents moved. It buttered up right to thousands of acres of public ground on the Corville Reservoir. And that's where Collins and I started learning most of our hunting and just whitetails in general. Yeah, it was about 2010 when Collins and I started hunting out there. We hunted there for a couple years. We had a lot of really good buck activity, but we found that these bucks, they just weren't living on the public ground. They were actually living in people's backyards. So we got the idea to go hunt some farms back in my hometown. And I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of family members that are landowners, a lot of family members that farm as well. So it was really quick. We got permission right away, and there's one farm that stood out over all the rest, and that's the home farm. It brings a smile to my face just thinking of that farm right now. It's 500, 600 acres in size. It's surrounded by big ag, a lot of cover in it, CRP, good timber, good white oaks, a lot of daytime browse for them, water going through it, just everything you could ever think that a deer would need, it's there. And right away we had success there. I killed my first bow buck there, walking to the stand with Collins in early October. It was a hot day. I can remember Josh killing the big 8 there. That's one of my favorite hunts that'll always bring a smile to my face and Josh's face no matter how old we get. That memory is awesome. And Casey and Collins both shot a couple of real nice bucks there too, but you know, going back in that 2012 time period when I started hunting out there to where I stopped hunting there was probably 2012 to 2017, and at the beginning I was running cameras, and I noticed that whole time period of hunting that farm, you know, these bucks, these big bucks, just didn't live there. And it made it really hard to hunt it with these deer not being there, because you would only really see good movement in that late October to November range. There were a couple other bow hunters in there, so there was some outside pressure as well, and just some stuff that I couldn't dictate myself and whatnot. So it was about that 2016 area, 2017, when I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna go look for more permission, because I wanna find deer that live on the property I'm hunting and that it'll make it easier for me to hunt them. Right away, I got real excited about it. I started on Onyx. That's where I do all my scouting from an aerial standpoint. I find all these permission pieces, and I'll go in depth with what I was looking for, but just for an example, a property that you guys know probably pretty well, it's the River Bottom Farm. I was doing some hunting on it this past year. It's where I killed tripod years ago. I remember the first year we got out there, it was awesome. It's about 5 acres of timber is what I would call it. It had about 30 acres of native grasses, CRP, on the east side, and it was a destination ag source. It had a lot of food on it. Collins and I can remember several encounters that we had, but we were just encountering big buck after big buck. You know, just blown away, because you know, I came from hunting a 500, 600 acre farm that had so much cover on it, and now I'm hunting this puny little draw with 30 acres of grass. And I would say now, looking back, that this river bottom property It was one that people would drive by and they wouldn't even think twice on whether or not there was a big deer out there. But anyways, that fall, 2019, we saw an awesome buck. He was bedded out in the grasses. It's probably a 170-inch caliber buck. I called him Turkey Foot, and it was funny. Collins and I walked right past him. He was bedded in that grass in that CRP, and he came out, watched him work a scrape, and you know, just going in on that farm, I just found out that, man, there are big deer in these little overlooked sections. So that got me curious. So I started throwing cameras up on all the little pieces that I could find. And two other properties that stick out, I'll start with the Prodigy farm. I call this farm the Prospect Farm. I've killed a couple deer on it. I brought Ethan on it in the past. He was an intern. I started running cameras in there. All that farm is, it's got a creek that runs through it, a few trees on it that follow that creek, and then it's got about a 30-acre chunk of native grasses as well, CRP. And right away when I was throwing cameras in there in the summer, I was getting big buck after big buck. And when I say big buck, I'm just talking about mature deer. But it was funny, there was one deer that I followed through the years that spent a lot of his time on this property, and that was Prodigy. He ended up getting killed. He was a 200-inch deer, and he roamed that area a lot. Now I'm kind of got two properties to base it off of, and so this next property that was the nail in the coffin for me when in learning that it doesn't take much for these deer to be living in such a tight corridor that no one would think of, and that's the Lucky Farm. The Lucky Farm is a small draw, maybe 2 acres of timber in size, and at the tip of the draw there is a good amount of probably 5 acres of native grasses that this landowner planted, drilled just for purposes of pheasant hunting. Well, I tracked this one deer there for a couple of years. He was a stud 3-year-old, stud 4-year-old, and this one summer Casey and I went out there and kind of had a hunch that he was in this native grasses just because that's where Turkey Foot was bedding and Prodigy was bedding in the grass portion of these properties. And sure enough, we got stellar footage of that deer from a distance, and that was the nail in the coffin that just told me, like, man, I'm looking at all these permission pieces that are 500, 600, maybe even 200 acres of cover in size, when no one's hunting these little properties that have maybe 10 to 30 acres in cover in size. And that's when the ball got rolling for me. So there's a lot of cool things down the road to come. Lee's coming over to the farm here this weekend. We're going to talk about GQ Junior. There's 3 traps that we're putting in for this deer. We're going to dive into that here in the future, in future segments. But you know, that's pretty much a wrap for today. So as always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope to see you back next time.